your brain fog or anxiety holding you back? The hidden culprit might be neuroinflammation, which is a silent disruptor affecting your brain function, your mood, and your mental clarity. If you're new here, my name is Lisa Ann Garcia, and I help you optimize your brain health so you can feel calm, focused, and productive every day. So first, before we get into today's topic, I want to let you know that I am starting a series that follows my 5 steps towards restoring brain health: inflammation, detox, nourishment, balancing the nervous system, and connecting the brain or rewiring. I'm going to be talking about each one of these 5 pillars for 5 weeks. Today is the beginning of a 5-part mini-series around neuroinflammation. So that's pillar number 1. And that is going to appear every Monday morning. On Thursdays, I'm also going to be dropping a video, but there's just going to be different topics, and hopefully they're going to be a little bit thought-provoking. They might kind of stretch your way of thinking, or hopefully it gives you just something really different to think about. So the Mondays is going to be the series around my 5 pillars, and Thursdays are just going to be other things that I put on my heart or whatever that I feel like I need to share. And also, if you put in a comment in any of the videos, when you put a comment, you can put something that you want to know more about, and those would probably be more like the Thursday topic, unless they happen to fall in line with the one of the 5 strands, which they very may well. But because it's going to take a while to get kind of to the 5th strand, if it has to do with one of the later strands, I might drop it in on a Thursday anyway. So today we are going to dive into a really important topic called it's not called neuroinflammation, but it is neuroinflammation. And we are going to break down what that is, why it matters, and how it's affecting your brain function, your mood, and your cognition. And any of these videos, you might be watching them for yourself, you might be watching them for a child or another loved one that you have. So I'm speaking to you, but I might be really speaking about your child. So just always have that in mind, because my heart is with kids. I was in the schools for a very long time, for like 25 years. I was a math specialist for half of that time, or more actually, as a math coach, and then taught in the university, and then had a pull-up program, and through all that I wrote books and stuff all on mathematics. So my heart is around when children are struggling in school, how that impacts them. However, it's really the same thing for everybody. So it could be you, could be your kid, could be somebody else that you know or that you love. Let's get on to it. So what exactly is neuroinflammation? Neuroinflammation is inflammation that happens in your brain. Okay, so it's kind of like it sounds. Just like your body can become inflamed due to an injury or an illness, inflammation also can become inflamed due to a variety of factors. So you can have the most obvious, like a concussion, right? Like that's inflammation in your brain. But it can also be caused by chronic stress, poor diet, exposure to toxins, and infections. Neuroinflammation is the brain's immune system. So the brain has its own separate immune system to these different stressors. And while it's designed to protect the brain in the short term, long-term or chronic neuroinflammation can wreak havoc on your cognitive function, your mood, and your overall mental health. So when let's say you're playing soccer and you bust up your knee, right? You fall and you hurt your knee. What's going to happen to your knee? There's going to be inflammation. Inflammation is really important, but it should be a short-term event. It should be helping you in short term. But when you have exposure, like different kind of stressors, and stressors can be internal or external. We'll talk about that later when we talk about in our detox strand. But when that inflammation is chronic or long-term, that's when we have a problem. So neuroinflammation, you have to think about it. It's the brain's way of signaling that something is wrong, right? Just like the knee thing, right? So the inflammation is kind of a signal that something's wrong. It's a warning system. And in the short term, it can help clear out harmful substances or repair damaged tissue. However, when the brain remains inflamed over a long period of time, it becomes harmful. It damages healthy brain cells and interrupts normal brain function. When your brain is inflamed, it's not operating to full capacity. So you might experience brain fog, where your thoughts feel sluggish or you struggle to recall simple information. This is probably more pertinent to us as we get older. Okay, so us meaning like people like me over 50 or whatever, once you start, especially if you're a woman and you're hitting that menopause state. Hold on a second. I have this camera right here that is not working, but I'm used to looking at it, and so I catch myself looking at the camera and not at this camera, which is looking directly at you. So I just had to take it off. I don't know what was wrong with it today. Anyway, so yeah, so for us, as you age, you kind of experience more of that brain fog, but when the neuroinflammation happens in utero, for example, because the baby is exposed to the mother's stressors or the toxins that we're exposed to, which we can't get away with from all of them. I mean, even if you tried, you can't, because we don't live in a bubble. Then if the brain is experiencing inflammation because of that, that is going to be very, very different than the neuroinflammation that we are experiencing as adults, because our brains are already connected and developed, and so we have different symptoms. But if the baby's experiencing brain inflammation in utero or shortly after birth or during those really early years when their brains are developing, they're going to be experiencing way different symptoms, because it's going to affect the development, the connectivity, so I mean, I think that's should make sense, right? Also, wherever the inflammation is, those symptoms are going to occur. So, for example, let's say in your left hemisphere, your language center is kind of like right over here, and let's say your inflammation is there. You know, just like if you have a stroke, right? A stroke is has to do with the oxygen not going, getting through the veins or the arteries or whatever. So if you're wherever that problem is, let's say your injury is there and there's some inflammation, or for whatever reason the toxins tend to for example, like heavy metals. So mercury tends to like your cerebellum. So there's different areas. So if those toxins are pooling there and causing inflammation in a certain area, you're going to experience the symptom of what that part of your brain is supposed to control. So hopefully that makes sense. But as a baby, because it's preventing the actual hookup of the brain, then that's when we start having all of these problems with autism, spectrum disorders, or ADHD or whatever. And actually, a child with ADHD, let's say two babies were in the womb and exposed to similar toxins, and one baby, maybe they were exposed to less, or their body was a little bit more adept at kind of defending itself. But one baby was responded more because maybe it wasn't able to defend itself or detoxify or whatever. So like ADHD is just more of a mild form of symptoms. Like it just kind of signals that they just kind of had less inflammation. There was not quite as much of an autoimmune flare-up or activation. Okay, so neuroinflammation doesn't just affect your ability to think clearly. It also impacts how you feel. We have part of the part of the brain, the limbic system, is the emotional part of the brain. It's right kind of like in the center. If we just kind of peeled all the other stuff off, we are kind of left with this center part of the brain called the limbic system. And research shows that inflammation in the brain is linked to mood disorders such as depression and anxiety. When your brain is inflamed, the production of certain neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, which help regulate mood, can be disrupted. These neurotransmitters are essential for feelings of happiness and motivation and emotional balance. And when their production is altered due to inflammation, it can lead to a range of mood-related issues. So if you've ever felt more anxious or irritable or down, without an obvious reason, neuroinflammation could be playing a bigger role than you realize. So now let's look, okay, so what's happening? So neuroinflammation triggers an immune response within the brain, which releases chemicals called cytokines. And cytokines help regulate the immune response. When produced in excess, they can lead to overactive immune responses, which can disrupt the brain's delicate balance, affecting areas involved in mood regulation, like the hippocampus and the amygdala. Those are two structures around mood and memory. And these regions are crucial for processing also emotions and managing stress. And when they're inflamed, then it can lead to feelings of anxiety, sadness, or even emotional numbness. Okay, so some people might feel like they're just extremely disconnected from everything and they don't feel anything. Neuroinflammation also impacts your cognition, right? So your ability to learn, to reason, and to remember things. Chronic inflammation has been linked to cognitive decline over the years and can increase your risk of neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So you can have the genetic disposition to get Alzheimer's, which, by the way, runs really heavy in my mom's side of the family. So I'm doing everything that I can to try to avoid it. But the activation of your immune system is going to play, like maybe it'll set you to early Alzheimer's or maybe less severe or more severe form. And this is because prolonged inflammation damages neurons and the connections between them, and it makes it harder for the brain to form new memories or retrieve old ones. As inflammation continues to be unchecked, so you don't really notice it, so when something is chronic, you tend to maybe not notice it, then you can have more serious and long-term consequences, including progressive loss of cognitive functions. So, for example, Alzheimer's disease, one of the most common disorders we were just talking about, it's been closely linked to chronic inflammation in the brain. And over time, neuroinflammation continues to the buildup of harmful plaques and tangles that damage the brain cells and interfere with communication between neurons. The longer inflammation goes unchecked, the greater the risk of significant cognitive decline, which is why addressing neuroinflammation early is so crucial. So now, how can you recognize if neuroinflammation is something that you might be dealing with? And by the way, there are lab tests actually for that, but you probably don't really need to go down that rabbit hole just quite yet. The signs, though, can be subtle at first. So the more you're able to notice your body, the better off you're going to be. So some people they don't even really notice when something is different. They haven't learned how to notice. So it's really important to start to really notice and be in tune with what's right and what's not right with your body. You might notice at first an increase in brain fog, difficulty concentrating, or changes in your mood. Some people may also experience physical symptoms like, a headache or fatigue, and that can, which can make it even harder to identify the underlying cause, because, headaches so many different things can cause a headache, and so many things can cause fatigue. Often neuroinflammation progresses slowly, which is why it also can be easily overlooked or just dismissed as just getting older. And by the way, probably a common theme that you're going to hear from me a lot is that obviously everybody's going to age, but what we want to do is we want to age gracefully. We don't want to accept a symptom just because, well, you're getting older. Okay, we shouldn't accept that. Something is causing it. Now, it may be progressing faster than we're able to support it, but let's say we do nothing and it's just progressing, it's just going to get out of control really fast. And this is not just a brain symptom, it's almost an anything symptom. But let's say it's progressing fast, but we are trying to do things in support of our body, and maybe we are not, so this is filling up the bathtub, and maybe we are not draining it fast enough. So we are still going to age, and we're still going to have symptoms, and we're still going to have problems, but we want to age gracefully. And I quite frankly, if I live to be 85 or 90 or these days, whatever, and I'm 54, so let's say 30 more years, I don't want to spend the last 20 years of my life in a brain fog, right? So even though I know obviously I'm going to age, and at the end I may be experiencing some of those Alzheimer's symptoms or whatever, I am going to do my darndest to try to prevent as much as possible, because I don't want my family to have to take care of me. I don't want to forget who they are. I mean, that's like the scariest thing for me. Okay, so let's look at what can cause neuroinflammation in the first place. Things like diet of high in processed foods, refined sugars, unhealthy fats, that definitely can increase inflammation, especially if there's foods that your body has a sensitivity to, because all those things that can trigger the inflammatory immune response. And if it's triggering the inflammation in your body, it's also going to trigger the inflammation in your brain. Okay, your brain's not separate from the rest of your body. And also there are infections such as viral, bacterial, or fungal infections, and low-grade infections actually is more prevalent than you're probably even aware. We're all walking around. So there's tons and tons and tons of good bacteria. Doctors didn't even really, until just barely recently, even give credit. So because I have a son who has moderate to severe autism, and he's 23, so 20 years ago, we were pretty much in the know about the gut biome and all these things that naturopaths are talking about. But now the mainstream doctors are starting to realize, oh, yes, we do have a microbiome. We have healthy bacteria and not so healthy bacteria. So we want everything to be in check. When our body is out of check, so imagine your lawn. If your lawn is full of weeds, if your gut is like that, so you have too much bad bacteria and not enough good bacteria, it's going to invite other things such as viral infections, bacterial infections, fungal infections, because if your whole gut is in check and everything is working the way it's supposed to work, then those, if we come in contact with a bacteria, your body's going to be able to get rid of it easier, or the viruses are going to be able to be dormant. So we're exposed to almost everything. We just want everybody to be in harmony and to be balanced. You can have some weeds in your garden or in your front lawn, but we want to have more grass than weeds, right? So infections can lead to brain inflammation as the immune system works to fight off those invaders, and that And if it's chronic, then, you know, that's not good, as we've been talking about. Also, stress is a major contributor. And the thing is we have, so we have different stressors. We have external stressors and internal stressors. And right now we're just going to talk about like the normal emotional type stress, but a food that your body is sensitive to, that's a stressor. Bad bacteria, that's a stressor. So we have stressors inside our body and we have stressors outside the body. Heavy metals in our air is a stressor, or poor processed food that we're consuming and eating, that is a stressor. But in this case, we're talking about, let's just look at emotional stress. And when we experience chronic stress, actually of any kind, our bodies will release higher levels of cortisol. So all those stressors I just mentioned, plus the emotional stress, all of those stressors can raise the cortisol, because your body is responding to the stress in a very similar way. And cortisol is a hormone that, if it's in excess, it can weaken the blood-brain barrier. And we are going to actually talk about the blood-brain barrier next week, but it's designed to protect the brain from the harmful substances from getting in. And so when it becomes compromised, the toxins and inflammatory molecules can slip through. So if you've heard of a leaky gut, we can have a leaky brain, so we'll talk about that later. But it creates this feedback loop where stress leads to inflammation, and inflammation makes it harder to manage stress and further exacerbating the problem. Sleep deprivation is huge, and when you don't get enough restorative sleep, your brain misses out on important processes that clear away waste and toxins. When you sleep, your brain actually shrinks and purges toxins and goes through the lymphatic system, but there's a lymphatic system in your brain called the glymphatic system. I'll be talking about that when we get to the detox portion. But it's why sleep is so important. We have to get rid of those toxins from the brain. Okay, so it's not just so we can feel less tired or rested, but it is important for maintaining overall brain health and reducing inflammation. So understanding and addressing neuroinflammation is key to protecting your brain's long-term health. The good news is that there are ways to reduce inflammation and support function. Simple lifestyle changes like adopting an anti-inflammatory diet. Okay, so you can Google anti-inflammatory diet. There is such a thing. Reducing stress, like trying to just figure out organize your life in a way that it's less stressful. For example, let's say waking up your child in the morning and getting ready for school is super stressful. So what we do, especially with my youngest isn't so hard, but my oldest, oh my gosh, it was like I had to wake him up 10 times or whatever. So what we do is we just do everything as early as possible that leads to a stress-free morning. So if I know that it's going to take me 30 minutes to actually get his butt out of bed, then I'm just going to wake up 30 minutes earlier, and then that way we're not, because I just had refused to have like a stressful morning. I'd rather wake up a half an hour early and then have everything go well. Another thing is getting things out ready at night. It's really nice to wake up and I know that I already have the vitamins out for the day. I already have kind of in my head, you know, like when the kids, they have the clothes out and they don't have to worry about what they're wearing for school. Getting regular exercise is really important. Prioritizing good sleep, as we talked about. They all can help lower levels of inflammation, and also certain supplements. So there's like omega-3, curcumin, antioxidants. They all help reduce inflammation and promote brain health. We're going to talk about, I think in the 5th video, we're going to talk more specifically about like supplementation or, you know, and nutrients that target brain inflammation. So by taking these steps to reduce inflammation, you can improve your mental clarity, you can boost your mood, reduce the risk of cognitive decline as you age, and for your child, you can improve mood, behavior, learning, memory. So it's not just for us as we age, but right now that's what I'm identifying the most with. But in the next video, we're going to be focusing on the role of the blood-brain barrier, like I mentioned earlier, that it has an inflammation, and it's it's a protective shield, and it's crucial for keeping out harmful substances of your brain. But when it's compromised, it can open the door to a whole host of issues. So if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, share it with somebody who can benefit from this information, and let me know in the comments if you've ever experienced brain fog, anxiety, cognitive issues, or maybe your child is struggling in school with some brain issues, because those things can be linked to inflammation. And don't forget again to subscribe for more brain health tips. This Thursday, I'm going to be talking about your child's IEP. So if you have a child who is on an IEP, or you are thinking about getting your child on an IEP, I'm going to be talking about whether it's helpful or whether it's harmful for your child. So make sure that you join me in that video.